change the name now, and one way to think about that is perhaps to just simply take a step back and rename the street Odawa, and and simply just drop the two T's. And but the name speaks to the role of the Odawa people and their ingenuity as traders, pre and post contact, and even more importantly, it speaks to the fact that they were relationship builders. And I think that, they built relationships with the Ojibwe and the Potawatomi people. They formed an alliance with those people as they were sort of moving through the different spaces that they occupied over time. And they formed a confederation known as the Council of Three Fires. But then also, as time went on and through contact as well, they formed really interesting and strong relationships with the French fur traders as well. So they were relationship builders, and so I think that that's really important. And you think about a time like right now, in July 2021, where we're recognizing the need to form relationships across different peoples, and also to sort of have an understanding of the history and thinking about what has happened in the past and how we're going to move forward. Whether it would be, whether the street would be renamed Odawa or whether it would be named something else, but it's, I think it's interesting and important to sort of consider how perhaps it could be, named to recognize the Indigenous presence on the island, because I don't think that that's, necessarily, we could certainly be doing more to sort of work on that. We have to be very aware of the fact that, and Griffintown is a perfect example of the way that, people occupied that space and how it keeps changing, and that in either whether it's through legislation or just sort of through the development of time, but you think about things like, the thriving, very, very poor, desperately poor neighborhood that Griffintown was to all of the Irish that came in, to the, to help with all the sort of the industrial work that was being done, doing the Lachine Canal, building the bridge and all of that. And that sort of, that neighborhood was just demolished over time. And then and then in 1963, Drapeau came in and said, this is an industrial area and no more residential is going to be built here, and things were getting raised. And then it just became, like, we lived in Point St. Charles for, in the early 2000s, and that sort of area, that stretch of land was like a wasteland. There was, virtually nothing down there. And so there was sort of that wave of getting rid of those people. And then now the sort of the developers have come in, and this might be totally unpolitical to say this, but now it's like all of those high rises are being built, and so the industrial history is sort of being wiped away as well. And so it's sort of, Montreal does a really good job of kicking over the traces of who was here in the past, and it's just really sad. And so I just think that we can sort of go back and recognize what was there previously, whether it's through the name or whatever, but it's also, not through monuments and not through, but just sort of, renaming and then sort of didactic texts or whatever to tell people, to sort of inform people about what had been there previously, I think would be, a really positive step forward. So there definitely are people at Ganawaki, for example, who could, if you wanted to go with an Indigenous name, there are Algonquin, Anishinaabe, speakers in the city as well. Because I think it's, it's really interesting that, we've got, in so many of the land acknowledgements that happen in the city, they always talk about the Haudenosaunee and and the Anishinaabe peoples being here and using this as a sort of meeting space. And so you know, it would be really interesting to sort of think about it as a sort of, you know, find out what the words are for things like, you know, gathering place or that sort of thing too as well, and just and think about how that could be, because it's, you know, it'd be lovely to sort of see that space become like a really interesting place in which people congregate, and you know, we're all double vaccinated and all of that kind of stuff, and we can come back together again. So thank you for this.